Hello and welcome back to the Reapers. So today we're in our L-39 Albatros, and I rarely get to fly this, so I'm looking forward to it. We're looking at navigation and three types of navigation that we have on board. First of all, we've got ADF, automatic direction finding system. We've also got RSBN, and then coupled with RSBN, we've got PRMG, which is a type of ILS landing. So if we go out here, we'll show you the rough plan for today. So we are currently stationed here, east of Nowcheck by about 30 miles. So first of all, we're going to go through the ADF navigation. This is automatic direction finding, and it basically allows us to find a direction or an azimuth to any particular NDB, non-directional beacon. Non-directional beacons are scattered about the map, but mostly in air bases where they're used, runways where they're used to guide you onto approaches. So if we wanted to find one, I'm going to zoom in down here. Nowcheck is going to be first destination. We're going to click on the airbase there. Now you can see all this information it's got, and what we're interested in here is the NDBs. We've got out here an outer NDB, 718 kilohertz, code name November Lima, and an inner NDB, 350 kilohertz, code name November. And we can't see them on the map here, but they are on the approach, the inner NDB, and there's only one approach for this airbase, which is runway 24. So we can measure out here the 1 mile, where we'll find roughly the inner NDBs, NDB. So the NDB for the inner one will be about there, and about 2 miles out will be the outer about there. Okay. So these are essentially radio transmitters. They're transmitting in all directions, and coded on the transmission is information, namely this here, the code name. Okay, so what we're going to do is pick one of these. Let's pick the inner NDB, 350 kilohertz, just because we can. What I should say at the moment is these NDBs are usually in the kilohertz range, so usually just below 1 megahertz or ever so slightly above 1 megahertz. Okay, now let's look at the gear, the ADF gear in the cockpit. So we've got, first of all, the main ADF control panel here. We've got, now this is a really cool type of ADF panel in this aircraft, because we get the ability to set up 2 stations. Most aircraft have just 1 station, and this one has 2, and you can switch between them, and that's really useful. The reason is, if we go back to the map, you'll often use this system for landing, and you have, as we said, 2 different stations for each runway. So what will happen is you'll guide yourself using the ADF system to this station here, the outer beacon. Then as you come, and then as you reach the outer beacon, you'll want to quickly switch to the inner beacon here. Now that's really difficult if you want to suddenly code the system in to get the second station. So what you can do here is set up the outer beacon here, the inner beacon here, and then you can switch between them two with this button here, or this switch here, which allows you to change between them quickly. So that's something really cool. Other controls are, we've got the signal strength meter here that we'll look at in a second. We've got the volume knob control here, which we'll be looking at. We've got the control here. This means if you want to control it in the front cockpit or the rear cockpit. I don't know what this switch is called, but if it's down, then it allows you to monitor the signal strength. If it's up, it allows you to monitor the audio coded on the radio signal. Most other players seem to have the ability to do both at once, but this only has either the display or the audio, so it's a bit annoying. We've got the master control here. We can have it off, automatic, manual, antenna or loop. We're just interested in automatic or manual. Very similar. Basically, it means that automatic means that if you hit the outer beacon, the first signal, then it would automatically switch the switch to the inner beacon here, to the next signal. If it's on manual, then you'll have to press this button yourself and to switch from one signal to the other. Brightness control there, and what's that? This here allows you to adjust the signal yourself, or adjust the needle. So we'll be using this instrument here for this. This is our radio compass, and the needle will point towards the signal once we receive it, and you can adjust it left and right yourself with this here. I have no idea why, but apparently that's useful. Right, okay, so let's get on with it. We're going to unpause. We're just going to trim the aircraft ever so quickly. That's pretty well trimmed. Right, so first of all, our master switch for the ADF, we're going to turn it on here. You can tell it's on because we've got the crackling. We've currently got, I'm just going to turn that down. we've currently got the primary station selected, this one here, and we can tell that because it's lit up at the moment. If we were to switch to the second station, we could see that the other one was lit up. So let's back to primary. Okay, then, so let's try and tune in to the station that we were interested in. And if you remember, it was Beacon November 350 kilohertz. So we're going to use this these knobs here to try and find that. We're going to switch to manual mode because we don't want it changed, because we are just going to navigate to the single waypoint at the moment, to the single beacon, and that's all we're interested in. And I should point out, once we've got to this beacon, then we're going to do the second half of the tutorial and look at RSBN and PRMG heading to Mosdoc, but we'll talk about that once we get there. Right, so got manual selected. We're going to turn that back up. Just going to trim myself out again. Right, okay, so now we're going to tune into the station. So this is our currently selected dial. We're going to hover about the outer dial here and use left and right click. Just going to turn that volume down again. To move it in the hundreds, so 100, 200, 300. Then we can hover here where that 50 is and change the tens of units. It's a little bit difficult to get to, but you see what I mean. Left and right mouse button again. And we want to be on 350. And then to change the single digits, we would use this knob to do the actual tuning of the single kilohertz. So we want 350, which is got there. Next thing we want to do is put this from audio down to signal strength, and that's going to allow us to make sure we can find the signal using this gauge here. So down to signal strength. So if I were to scroll about, you'll see that we've lost signal, and as we move towards the 0 there, that is going to be our station almost certainly. So it's going to be 350 kilohertz, and then the tuning knob up to 0 to make it exactly 350, and it's got the signal there. In a minute we will check that it is the right signal, but that was a really easy one to find. They're usually not as easy, so you usually have to maneuver this around a bit until you get the signal. So once we think we've got the signal, now we need to check it's the right signal. So we're going to turn this to audio, turn the volume up and listen. Now, our station, if you remember, was station November. November N converted into Morse code is -dot, I believe. So what we're going to listen for is the Morse code and check that we've got the right beacon. And you can hear there -dot. That was showing that we've got beacon N selected, and that means we're happy to go to our beacon. So we're going to look at our radio compass here. I should say during the course of this tutorial we'll be looking at the radio compass here. Well, we're looking at lots of dials, but the radio compass here, HSI here, and ADI artificial horizon here, all for navigation at different parts. So the radio compass here is telling us it's basically off to our right, so we want to center that in the 12 o'clock position, and that will get us on the correct heading. A little more to the right. Okay, we've got that in the 12 o'clock position. And we're golden. So this system is a one-way system only. It sends radio signals out from the beacon and we receive it, but we don't send signals back, so there's no actual handshake. What that means is that we can get azimuth or directional information, but we can't get range. So all we've got is this this director here telling us which direction to head in. So we don't know when we're getting closer. The only way of knowing once our distance, if you like, is when we're over the top of it, at which point this needle will start to spin around relatively violently. That means we're over the top, and the signal is no longer in front of us as such. You'll see it spin around, and we'll see that when we get there. So let's just quickly prove to ourselves we are on the right heading, just as a sanity check. So if I draw a compass line from here to us, look at the top of the screen, about 276 to that beacon, okay. And if I click on us there, you can see our heading is 278, so we're 2 degrees out. So let's continue along the journey to this beacon, full power. Okay, we've skipped a bit of time, we've done the 20 miles, and we're heading, we're near the station. I've just slipped off course slightly, so I'm going to get my radio compass here back to 0. Also gained a hell of a lot of altitude, 7,000 feet, so we're going to lose a bit of that. Okay, back on radio compass signals. We're about 2 or 3 miles away when I had to look at the map last. Whoops. And suddenly the needle will start swinging violently. And that will mean that we're over the top. We're not quite there yet. And around it goes. And you can see the radio needle swung all the way around, showing that we are basically above the beacon. And you can see there we are. We've travelled from east to west, gone over the beacon, and that's how we showed that we could navigate to it and that we were over the top of it. Now we won't go in doing a landing using this system, but just suffice to say we could have gone in for a landing using our HSI course line, as we'll go through with the RSBN. So we could have come down on the correct course, heading towards outer beacon here. We would know when we were over the outer beacon, whoops, because our outer beacon light would come on. I'm not sure which one it is. It's one of these. I think it's just marker there. It shows that we're over. We had gone over that outer beacon. At that point we would know we were 2 miles out. We would know the certain altitude we'd need to be for that glide slope for 2 miles out, which is 600 feet AGL, I believe. We will carry on and switch to our second station, which would be this one here. Navigate to that. Again, the mark and beacon would flash once we were over that beacon, and we would know we would want to be 300 feet because we were 1 mile out, and then we would basically continue on that course line and that azimuth until we hit the runway. Okay, anyway, so that's that system. Next, we're going to look at the RSBN, and related to that is the PRMG. The RSBN is similar to the ADF in that it will communicate with ground radio station. But it's an improved, more modern version because it can actually handshake with that system and swap information, and you can also get a range as well as azimuth. So again, these will be beacons or transmitters about the map, normally at air bases. So if we wanted to find one, we can click on the Mosdoc here, which I know has got one. We can find, excuse me if I can find it, RSBN there, and it's RSBN channel 20. So these are channels rather than frequencies. And related to that, we can find the PRMG down here, which is channel 22, and we'll be using runway 8 today. Incidentally, runway 8 is the exact heading of, or the exact vector of 083 degrees. So the RSBN is interested in just longitude and latitude, not altitude, and it's used for long distance navigation. So we could use it to traverse between different airports, which are about 50 miles apart. That's an example. As we get closer in our example to Mosdoc, then we're going to start switching over to PRMG, at which point it starts taking into account the altitude as well. So about 25 miles out, we're going to switch from a basic navigation mode to a landing mode, to a approach mode, which will keep us on the same heading, the same azimuth. We'll keep correcting our azimuth, but also start giving us an altitude and start bringing us down into a rough approach. And then when we are about 20 kilometers, so about 13 miles, something like that, we'll go to the full PRMG or ILS mode, and that will bring us in, similar to I guess any ILS system. It will bring us in along a beam of radiation that's being sent out from this runway, and it will bring us along a glide slope approach in terms of altitude and azimuth until we touch down at the runway. It won't take us to the very tip of the runway, it will take us to the center of the runway. So which means that at the very last minute, when we pop through the cloud, as you saw, it's completely clouded out at the moment, we'll use our eyes to adjust and do the last kind of few hundred meters. Right, so the first thing we want to do is get our RSBN set up. So just to show you where everything is, we need to make sure our master switch is turned on. Here, RSBN is up, and it is at the moment, so that's good. And make sure our SDU, which is the controller for this artificial horizon here, is up, which it is, so that's good. Here is our RSBN main navigation board. We also have some switches here, RSBN to switch between the different modes, as I briefly spoke about earlier, and our SDU switch here for when we want to add control to the artificial horizon. So we're going to unpause now, just quickly trim out. That'll do. So, very simple. Let's quickly look at this board. We've got navigation here. So this is the main RSBN channel selector for navigation, and this is the PRMG for landing. We've got lights here that tell us when we've managed to pick up a station. Volume control again, a bit like with the ADF. We've got the tester switch here, and we've got manual input here for azimuth and distance. Now I haven't worked out the reason for these yet, but you can change the azimuth and distance with these buttons here. So it was channel 20. I'm going to hover over it, use my left and right mouse button to turn. And landing channel, I know we're not going to land yet, but it's best to type it in now. It's a lovely intuitive system, so you can have them set up and ready, and then we can just switch between the two systems with this switch here. Right, as you can see, we've picked up the station because we've got these green lights. If we didn't have these green lights, then for some reason we wouldn't be picking up the station. Maybe because we were behind a mountain or too far away because of earth curvature or whatever. And that's going to be, we're not using the radio compass anymore. What we're going to use now is the HSI, and the HSI has now come alive. This needle here is showing the direction of the station, the navigation station that is picked up. Okay, so we're facing here. This is our 12 o'clock position, 275 or 280, and it's telling us that we want to head here. So let's turn on. First thing we're going to do is turn on to that heading. Just notice that we've still got, you can hear the beeping, we've still got our ADF turned on. We can get rid of that now, we're not interested in that. So ADF master off. You see we're bringing it round for this needle here. We want that in the 12 o'clock position. Losing altitude a bit because I know I'm going to want to go in for a landing at some point. And level out there. So you can see now we're on heading more or less for Mosdoc channel 20 or whatever it was, channel 20, whatever, near enough anyway. And so let's just convert that to what we're into our map. So we can show that the correct azimuth to the airport is 6.5. If we click on ourselves, we can see that it's 7.3. We're slightly off. But essentially, we're heading in the right direction to the airport. Now, that's not actually much use to us because we're going to be coming in on an approach for landing. And you can see the runway. We want to make sure that we come along that correct angle or that correct course, as it's known, for the runway. So there's no point in just heading towards the runway as we're going to do. We've got to get on this course line here, which we know is a vector of 083. And we can prove that because it might tell us in here. If it doesn't, I don't think it tells us. We can actually just go and measure it. We can put our course line on here, our measuring line, and 082, maybe it's 082. Okay, let's go for 082. Okay, so we've got to get my course line. So that's going to take priority over before we do anything else. Now the course line is shown here with this arrow here. And what we're going to do is set that to 082. And then I'll show you how we can navigate to that course line. So we're going to turn this knob here, and you can see that we can adjust the course line indicator. And I'm going to put it to 082. Let me just have a little look. So that is going to be 8 there, that's 9 there. So 082 would be that there. Okay. Now, interestingly, that we can see that the course line and the heading to the runway currently don't match up. That means that we're not on that course line. So what we're going to do to adjust is that, if you remember, the course line we want to get on is something like that. We're actually going to head, rather than the airport, we're going to head north here. And we're going to intercept that course line and then drive right towards Mosdoc so that we're on the right course line and the right heading. I should say also that we've got a distance at this point. You can see we're 80 something kilometers from the airbase. So there's unpause, full power, and we're going to ignore the heading that it wants to put us on, and we're going to head due north. In fact, we don't need to go due north. We can go slightly right of north. So let's put it 020. Okay, so we're heading due north. We're heading roughly north now, roughly that angle, and we're going to slowly get closer to that course line there. And as we do, what we're going to see is that this heading indicator to the airbase is going to start to marry up with this course indicator here. When these two needles are married, then what we're going to see is that we are on the right heading to the runway and the right course, as long as we've got them in the 12 o'clock position. So we'll see that. Okay, I've skipped a bit of time there, and you can see that our heading and our course indicator are now nearly aligned. So what we're going to do is start to turn right and try and time it so that we get these two together as well as getting them in the 12 o'clock position. So let's start a lazy turn right. Sorry if my up and down bad flying. I can't talk and fly at the same time. That's really hard. Very nearly aligned. That's got it. That's got it. Now I'm going to turn on heading. Right. And let's pause there. So we've just been using our HSI. That's all we've been using. We've got the course line now perfectly at R12. We've got the heading line to the airbase perfectly at R12. And because we've done that, we now are confident that we are on the correct course line. If we drew a line up from that runway at 82 degrees, whatever it is, something like that, you can see we're bang on that course line. We've also got our heading in the correct angle. We're heading exactly towards 081 presumably, and we are 082. So we're coming into the runway on the correct course line. So we're just going to burn some time by flying now until we get within the 25 miles or so, where we can switch over to the landing mode. The approach mode. Right, I've just realised we are 25 miles exactly, so that was handy. So let's change our mode. So we were in navigation mode here, which just, like I said, just deals with longitude and latitude, doesn't care about elevation. Next, we're going to what I call the approach, actually called the glide path here. And that's going to start bringing us down for a rough approach, basically. So let me press that. And down we go. Okay, and we've got some new symbols now. So what we've been given extra now on our HSI is this line here. It's a rough glide slope line. It's below us. We are basically in the center. It's below us at the moment, showing us that the glide slope for the runway is actually below us. So we're going to have to go down to chase that basically, and we want to keep it in the middle so that we can keep this three-dimensional glide slope towards the runway, as well as keeping these two in the 12 o'clock position. Also note that we've got this marker here, K, above us. So I believe that's saying that we are above the glide slope. If it was down here, this light here, we would say that we are below the glide slope. So let's get on with that. Also bring back the throttle a bit because we're going to go into a descent. Now it's going to be full whiteout conditions, so we're going to be completely reliant on our, basically on our HSI at the moment. Now we've slipped off course, so let's get back on course. Let's start reducing altitude. And this system basically has got a long range, if you like, three-dimensional approach to the runway programmed in, which is what we're following. And that allows us to basically, whoops, sorry, talking. That allows us to be completely trusting in the system. And we know therefore that there's no terrain or obstacles in the way. So if we're in a situation where we're like this, complete whiteout, we just trust the system. I'm just going to go heads down. There's no point of looking out the window. What am I going to see? Nothing. So, yeah. So we can be completely reliant on that this will get us there. Right. Again, I'm just struggling to talk and at the same time. Right. So we can see our course line and our heading line are in the center now. And I'm maneuvering up and down just to try and keep this glide slope line in the right place. The glide slope line is the one that's moving up and down. I want to keep it right in the center there, essentially, and that means I'm descending right on the glide slope, which would be nice. Also, we're going to have periodic looks down for our distance to the runway. Slightly left now. We are 23 clicks from the runway. I'm pretty sure that's kilometers rather than miles, even though I've got the English cockpit installed now. We've also got altitude there, speed there, so everything we need to fly there. Sync rate gauge there. Whoops, talking. Okay, so I've stopped it at this point. Now we're just about to reach 20 kilometers from the base. At this point is where I would switch from our glide path setting on the RSBN to the PRMG to the landing mode and go in for the final ILS landing. However, I've tried this several times on several air bases today and it appears to be bugged. On some air bases, the localizer, the azimuth guide has stopped working altogether, and some air bases, the glide slope is just not working. It's just driving me into the ground several miles before the base. So it appears to be bugged at the moment, and I've tried different variants of the L-39. So we'll cut the tutorial there. So what we've shown is the ADF side of things, the ADF navigation, and we've shown the RSBN and how to use the RSBN to come in for a glide slope. And what I'll do is when the PRMG ILS is working for the landing, I shall then do a new separate video for that. So sorry for the disappointment for no landing, but I'll do that as soon as I can. I hope that helps otherwise, and I'll see you later.